The Battle of Hogwarts is remembered as the final confrontation between Harry Potter and Lord Voldemort. But from a military perspective, it was something else entirely. A bloodbath. A fortified castle defending itself against a larger invading force. Today, we are going to analyze the Battle of Hogwarts as military historians. How many fighters took part? What defensive plans were put in place? Where were the likely breach points? And how costly was the final victory? By the end of this video, everyone will have a better understanding of how catastrophic this battle truly was. The defenders of Hogwarts were a mixture of professional fighters, volunteer students, and magical allies. The core consisted of Hogwarts professors led by McGonagall, Flitwick, Sprout, and Slughorn. Supporting them were members of the Order of the Phoenix, including Kingsley Shacklebolt, Remus Lupin, Arthur Weasley, Bill Weasley, Charlie Weasley, and others. Former students and volunteers from Hogsmeade would later join the defense. The student force was much smaller than many people assume. Most younger students were evacuated before the battle. The Slytherins were removed from the castle after Pansy Parkinson's attempt to hand Harry over to Voldemort. This left primarily 7th-year students and members of Dumbledore's army who chose to remain and fight. A reasonable estimate places the student force at roughly 30 to 40 combatants. Additional defenders included Hagrid, the half-giant, and Grob, a full giant whose immense size made him one of the most powerful individual assets available to Hogwarts. Aberforth Dumbledore would also provide massive contributions to the defense. One unusual defender should also be counted: Peeves the Poltergeist. Though often forgotten, he actively participated throughout the battle and contributed to the defense of the castle. Altogether, Hogwarts likely fielded between 100 and 150 living defenders. Supporting them were an estimated 100 to 150 enchanted statues, suits of armor, and stone animals brought to life by McGonagall. Voldemort's army was larger and more diverse. Its core consisted of Death Eaters. These were experienced fighters and Voldemort's most trusted followers. Supporting them were Snatchers, who functioned as irregular infantry. The attackers also included several terrifying non-human forces. Giants acted as living siege weapons. Werewolves served as shock troops. Acromantulas created chaos on the battlefield. And Dementors provided psychological warfare unlike anything found in the non-magical world. While exact numbers are impossible to determine, Voldemort's force likely numbered between 400 to 800 combatants, and significantly outnumbered the defenders. Kingsley Shacklebolt can be viewed as the defending army's leading general. He understood that Hogwarts could not defeat Voldemort's army through sheer numbers. The goal was delay. Every minute gained was another minute for Harry Potter to complete his mission. The first step was evacuation. Non-combatants were removed from the castle, while Fred and George Weasley were assigned to inspect and secure secret passages and hidden entrances throughout Hogwarts. Next came the deployment of Hogwarts defenders. Rather than concentrating everyone in one location, Kingsley and the professors divided their forces into defensive sectors. Professor Flitwick was assigned to Ravenclaw Tower. From this elevated position, he could direct long-range magical attacks against approaching enemies while also helping maintain the castle's protective enchantments. Professor McGonagall took command of Gryffindor Tower. Like Flitwick, she occupied a high position, capable of delivering long-range attacks against forces advancing towards Hogwarts. Professor Sprout was positioned near the Astronomy Tower. This gave her access to both heights and the castle's grounds below, allowing dangerous magical plans to be deployed against attacking troops. Professor Sprout prepared some of the most dangerous magical plants in Britain for combat, including mandrakes, devil's snare, and venomous tentacula. Together, these towers created overlapping fields of magical fire covering much of the castle's approach. Kingsley Shacklebolt, Remus Lupin, and Arthur Weasley took command of the grounds in front of the main entrance. This became the primary frontline position. Any force breaking through the outer barriers would be forced to confront them before reaching the heart of Hogwarts. Supporting these defenders was one of the most unusual armies ever assembled. McGonagall animated approximately 100 to 150 statues, suits of armor, and stone animals throughout the castle. These magical constructs never tired, panicked, or retreated. They served as reserved infantry capable of reinforcing threatened positions throughout the battle. They were primarily tasked with securing the front of the main entrance with Kingsley, as well as several choke points in the corridors. The final layer of defense came from Professor Flitwick's protective enchantments. The shields were never expected to stop Voldemort forever. Their purpose was to buy time. Together, these measures allowed a much smaller force to resist a significantly larger army. Despite the defenders' preparations, Voldemort's army eventually succeeded in breaking through portions of Hogwarts' outer defenses. The protective enchantments weakened under sustained attack. The grounds became contested, and eventually, fighting spread into the castle itself. At this point, the battle entered a new phase. What had begun as a siege transformed into close-quarters urban warfare fought throughout the halls of Hogwarts. This is where the castle itself became a weapon. Professor McGonagall animated desks and furniture, sending them charging through the corridors against attacking forces. Throughout the castle, enchanted objects became active participants in the battle. Professor Trelawney took up position high above the fighting and began hurling crystal balls onto attackers below. From an elevated position, she effectively transformed classroom supplies into improvised artillery. Peeves the Poltergeist moved throughout the castle, throwing objects at advancing attackers and harassing enemy forces wherever opportunities appeared. Meanwhile, Hogwarts animated statues, suits of armor, and stone animals continued fighting throughout corridors and courtyards. Every hallway became a potential ambush. Every room became a defensive position. The castle itself was fighting back. As the fighting intensified, Voldemort unexpectedly halted the battle. He announced a temporary ceasefire and demanded Harry Potter to surrender himself. From a military perspective, this pause was significant. The wounded could be treated. The dead could be recovered. Commanders could reorganize surviving forces and access losses. For Voldemort, the ceasefire represented an attempt to achieve victory through psychological pressure rather than continued casualties. The battlefield briefly fell silent, but the war was not over. After Harry's apparent death and Voldemort's terms of surrender towards Hogwarts, the battle entered its final phase. At this critical moment, unexpected reinforcements entered the fight. The Centaurs emerged from the Forbidden Forest and began firing arrows into Voldemort's forces. Their arrival opened a new front against attackers already engaged with Hogwarts defenders. At the same time, the Hogwarts house elves charged from the kitchens under the leadership and battle cries of Creature. Armed with kitchen knives, they attacked the legs and lower bodies of enemy combatants. While unconventional, their assaults created confusion and further stretched Voldemort's forces. Combined with the remaining defenders, these reinforcements began overwhelming portions of the attacking army. The battle reached its climax with two decisive deaths. First came Bellatrix Lestrange. As Voldemort's most dangerous lieutenant, Bellatrix represented one of the last pillars of leadership within the attacking force. Her death removed a key battlefield commander. Moments later came the death of Voldemort himself. The Dark Lord's defeat shattered the chain of command. Historically, armies often collapse when their supreme commander is eliminated. The Battle of Hogwarts was no exception. With Voldemort dead, organized resistance rapidly disintegrated. The battle was officially over. The defenders paid a terrible price. Confirmed deaths included Fred Weasley, Remus Lupin, Nymphadora Tonks, Colin Creevey, Lavender Brown, and Severus Snape. These were only the named casualties. Based on the scale of the battle, a reasonable estimate places total defender deaths somewhere between 55 and 60 individuals. For a force that may have numbered around 100 to 150 fighters, those losses were devastating. This would mean, at the start of the battle, each defender's odds of survival would be based on the flip of a coin. Voldemort's forces also suffered significant casualties. Among the confirmed losses were Lord Voldemort, Bellatrix Lestrange, Nagini, and Vincent Crabbe. In addition, large numbers of Death Eaters, Snatchers, Acromantulas, Giants, and other Dark-aligned forces were defeated during the fighting. A reasonable estimate places total attacker casualties somewhere between 100 and 200 fighters. The difference is that Hogwarts could absorb those losses and continue fighting. Voldemort's army could not. Once Bellatrix fell, and Voldemort himself was defeated, the entire command structure collapsed. What had been an organized assault became a rooted force. From a military perspective, Hogwarts should not have won. The defenders were outnumbered. Many were students, and Voldemort possessed overwhelming offensive power. Yet Hogwarts possessed three critical advantages: a fortified castle, exceptional defensive preparation, and defenders willing to hold the line long enough for the enemy's leadership to collapse. In the end, the Battle of Hogwarts was not won because Hogwarts was stronger. It was won because its defenders successfully delayed an enemy that expected a quick victory. And in warfare, time is often the most powerful weapon of all. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy this content, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below.